I welcome you today on the first of a series of webinars that will be held by the Gozo Business Chamber in the coming weeks. This webinar is being jointly organized by Bank of Valletta and the Gozo Business Chamber. I would like to thank, first of all, both Malta Enterprise and Business First, especially its CEO, Marika Tonna, for accepting our invitation. We as a chamber, similar to other organizations, have had to move fast and rethink ourselves during these times. This webinar is a testimony to this effect. Due to the current situation, we could not organize our usual information seminars, though we believe that through this platform, we will be also doing our part and keep the business community in Gozo informed and up to date on what is happening. Though you will not have the opportunity to interact verbally, on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there is a small icon with a question mark. Please use it to be able to make questions even during the session, which Ms. Marika Tonna will be answering towards the end of the session. The questions made by all the participants will all appear at the right-hand part of your screen. So when you press that small icon on the right-hand corner of your screen, type your questions and the question will appear. We will be able to answer it at the end of the session. There is also a comment box, so if any of you have any difficulty, please also use that comment box and we will try to give the best technical assistance possible. The scope of this webinar is to provide an overview of the schemes run by Malta Enterprise, common difficulties encountered and concerns, and also a Q&A session with the CEO of Business First. As a chamber, and at this crucial point in time that we are all living, we felt that we also had to do our part. It was useless closing ourselves when so many businesses and people are experiencing so many difficulties. In Gozo, we have the added burden of double insularity, which means that businesses in Gozo face extra difficulties than those situated on the main island of Malta. These issues are mainly related to accessibility. To this end, we have decided to open up this event even to those who are not members of the chamber. We have also decided to stream it live on our Facebook page, though those who will be seeing it there will not be able to interact with this session. To this end, I would like first to invite our President, Joseph Borg, to deliver an introductory message.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, I'm there, I think. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is with pleasure that I welcome you this morning in these extraordinary times. Thank you to all those that have registered for this webinar, to those who are members of the Gozo Business Chamber, and to all our friends who are following us on FaceTime. The COVID-19 pandemic has been the cause of these extraordinary times, but it is also extraordinary, as Daniel just said, that we are meeting on this medium. A well-attended meeting, but none of us has moved from his office or his home. Sign of the new times we are living. I have said extraordinary times. Since the start of this pandemic, the Gozo Business Chamber, recognizing the unprecedented events that were taking place, affirmed that extraordinary events require an extraordinary response. We based our call on two principles. The first and foremost principle is that our chamber, as always, and as is just and right, has made a total commitment in defense of its members. Our officials and the council members, myself included, have never had so many lengthy telephone conversations, meeting over Skype, Zoom, and what have you, with our members who have found themselves in uncharted waters, risking of losing all that they have built strenuously over the past years. Thus, any interpretation of our press releases and verbal communications outside this context is totally irrelevant. The second principle is the highlighting of the particular difficulties faced by Gozo businesses. Here I quote from the joint press release which our chamber made with the Gozo Tourism Association, quote, "It is an undisputed fact that in problems of national relevance, and especially those of international dimension like the COVID-19, businesses on the island of Gozo are the first to be hit and the last to recuperate. The Gozo Business Chamber and the Gozo Tourism Association are for this reason making a strong joint appeal to government to heed to the particular difficulties being encountered by businesses on the island of Gozo," unquote. Having made these introductory remarks, let me give you some more background to the webinar of this morning. The Gozo Business Chamber's reaction to the initial package announced by government on Saturday, 14th March, was contained in a press release issued the day afterwards. The press release lauded government for introducing aid to help teleworking efforts and the protraction of NI, payee and VAT payments, but did not mince words to government for burdening businesses with quarantine leave payment. We were already feeling the heavy impact on our members, and so we asked for a substantial wage subsidy and the cash injection by way of grants and loans at subsidized rates. After publishing a short survey to analyze the situation amongst our members on the 17th March, the direness of events became even more apparent, and we could not but make a call to government that, quote, "the present circumstances warrant stronger moves and a more incisive framework," unquote. This was the main thrust of the press release which the Chamber issued on the 19th March in reaction to new lukewarm measures established by government the day before. Government had announced loan repayment bridging, loan guarantees, interest rate subsidies, but nothing concrete how these would work. We asked government for a more advantageous stimulus package, the subsidizing of utilities, the fast tracking of government payments, and a special aid package for Gozo businesses. On the 21st March, seeing that government had not reacted immediately, we teamed with the Gozo Tourism Association and issued a press release where we stated that, quote, "the incentives announced are a non-starter," unquote. We insisted that government should at least contribute the minimum wage for every employee in the private sector, again to reduce the cost of utilities, licenses, rents, and other government dues. Provide loan guarantees, repayment moratoria, and interest-free loans. Government's response came 3 days afterwards, after due consultation with the constituted bodies, including the Gozo Business Chamber. In what has become known as the COVID wage supplement scheme and the famous Annex A and B, we in Gozo have managed to negotiate a better deal by having government granting 2 days in a week of wage subsidy to those on Annex B. Government also announced that subsidized interest loans will be taken care of by the Malta Development Bank. When on Friday, 3rd April, Malta Development Bank announced a scheme that just made up for 1% of what one is normally charged as interest by the banks, we were again vociferous in our disapproval. We did not criticize the Malta Development Bank itself because we were privy to the fact that they were working within very restricted parameters. And what they offered was the best they could offer and the best they were allowed to offer. But it was definitely not enough for businesses. And so we criticized the executive vice president in charge of competition policy in the European Commission for having stated that the Maltese scheme, quote, will help businesses cover immediate working capital needs and continue their activities in these difficult times, unquote. On the same day that the Malta Development Bank came up with its initial proposal, the European Commission took away all restrictions and came out stating that member states were now enabled, quote, to give up to the nominal value of €800,000 per company, 0 interest loans, guaranteeing on loans covering 100% of the risk or provide equity, unquote. Government announced changes to the COVID-19 guarantee scheme on the 16th April, accepting most of our requests. This is what we effectively had clamored for. The banks and Malta Enterprise will be the actual institutions who will be working out these incentives in practice, and proof of the pudding will be in the eating. I have gone through this introductory background to make the position of the Gozo Business Chamber abundantly clear. Most of what we have asked for has been granted, but there remain other issues which we still need to continue lobbying for. We are trying our best to be true to our members when they most need our help. We want to thank all for their positive response to our requests. Government, the banks, and Malta Enterprise. And to conclude, I mention one last remark as food for thought. We need to act on a post-COVID program, and the Gozo Business Chamber is doing precisely that, preparing a post-COVID action plan, how Gozo will restart, and where we are seeing Gozo short-term and long-term. Definitely a silver lining of this pandemic has been the rediscovering of nature and our environment. The world has started to breathe anew. There has also been a lot of talk by government of the need to take care of our spending during this period, and that every euro handed out to business must be accounted for. The Gozo Business Chamber cannot be more in agreement with this. This has also helped me recall the relatively recent handout payment made by our government to the government of Estonia to the tune of €2 million, so that Malta would reach its renewable energy targets. In this context, one of our suggestions to government is to subsidize interest rates for businesses that are keen to invest in renewable energy. If, say, Malta Enterprise would use €2 million as subsidy on interest at 2.5%, then it would help to release €80 million in the renewable energy sector, which direly needs it as much as our country needs to be more active in this sphere. Wouldn't it be much better than handing out funds to another country? As I stated initially, this is food for thought for the government, Malta Enterprise, and the banks. Let me conclude by thanking Bank of Valletta and Malta Enterprise Business First for supporting our webinar. Thank you, Marika Tonna, CEO, Business First, and Albert Frendo from BOV. I also thank our CEO, Daniel Borg, who has managed to set up this webinar in a couple of days with the help of Richard Gregg. I leave the floor to Albert Frendo, Chief Credit Officer, Bank of Valletta, who will now be addressing us. Again, we thank you all for being so numerous with us this morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Okay, Mr. Frendo.
Good morning. Obviously, these are unprecedented times, and obviously there are a lot of questions and anxiety, which obviously is very highly understandable. And we as banks obviously are a protagonist in the situation, in the sense that we need to obviously to support the local economy whilst as well protecting our depositors and obviously ensure that we are in line with the regulatory framework that commercial banks are obliged to work within. So the situation is quite challenging, but like any other else, I'm very much comforted by the fact that the Maltese, and obviously when I say the Maltese and Gozo entrepreneurs, typically in such situations, they are very much entrepreneurial in their nature, and we take the necessary actions, obviously, to salvage the situation and try to make the best out of these challenging times. It is challenging times because obviously while typically we talk about recessions and about sectors which might have dips like the normal cycles of economic environment, here obviously we have a complete lockdown. That's the word. Obviously, when we have a lockdown of the economy as such, it started with the touristic sector, then it obviously transposed in the retail sector, but actually it practically affected everyone. That put huge pressure on the bank, especially Bank of Valletta being the largest bank with the largest business sector customers we have on the island, obviously to act quickly and to act effectively. And we started immediately, obviously, by providing moratoria and other actions to ease liquidity again. And we were also the first bank to start providing finance outside, obviously, the recent scheme being offered by the Malta Development Bank. Where are we now? I think because ultimately that is the most important action, the important things that you wish to hear. First of all, obviously, the most important thing is the speed in which we provide liquidity in the economy, because the winning game in all this is all about liquidity. For the game is no longer profitability at this stage. It's not a question of making profit, it's a question of surviving this period, which hopefully, although no one knows how much it's going to take, but hopefully it's so far people are looking at a 3 to 6 months period, 9 months period. Obviously the impact is still very early to determine the length of this situation. And it will surely also vary between the different sectors. So we expect, for instance, the wholesale and retail sector will start recovering earlier than, say, the tourism sector, where obviously it's very much dependent also on the airports and on the good feel or bad feel factor, obviously, that customers have in traveling and obviously visiting other countries. So there are lots of questions and ponderables, obviously, that are having an impact on the way we look at the future. Right now, obviously, the bank was the first bank to enroll in the multi-development bank scheme. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to go into details of this scheme, but basically it's a scheme which is wide-ranging. Practically everyone is eligible to apply. We as a bank as well, we try to influence as much as possible, obviously, to ensure that the scheme is effective as much as possible. And practically, while before there were some sectors which were excluded, in this case, other than those sectors which obviously are illegal or in the gray area of the economy, let's call it that way. Obviously, the 95, 98, 99% of the sectors are being involved. And what is good as well, it is that obviously it widened the net, not only to cover SMEs, which are obviously the most important, but it also covers large companies, which, as you know, obviously are the large employers of the island, and obviously they deserve assistance as much as smaller companies do, because everyone in this case is in the same situation. Briefly, without going into much detail, obviously, as you know, the scheme is basically it offers for SMEs a maximum amount up to 4 million, and when it comes to large entities, a maximum amount up to 8 million. Obviously, one expects that ultimately, when you seek finance, you do the what's necessary to ensure that you limit the hemorrhage that is resulting from the situation. So every good businessman is expected, obviously, to look at its cost structure and obviously try to minimize the cost structure as much as possible, and then obviously seek financing. Was this financing ultimately it's funding, unfortunately, loss-making activities? So to repay it back, obviously, that has to come back from future profits and from future profit margins. So it's not a question of seeking to maximize borrowing, but it's seeking to borrow with one main objective, two main objectives, to be honest. One is obviously to survive, and this next objective is that while surviving, you protect your assets, and your assets are your resources. Your resources are your premises, your people, your brand. So obviously, when you are seeking financing, you have to keep that in mind. At the end of the day, we need to believe that this is a short-term activity, long as it may take, but ultimately good times will become, and obviously those wise businessmen who take the right decisions obviously have a much higher probability to survive than those obviously who are looking short-term. As I said, obviously, the government also stated that there is going to be interest subsidy for the first two years of the scheme. We have informed the market of what we are offering as a price structure. Obviously, every bank has its own price structure, but we feel that we have been very, very competitive, considering obviously the environment we are working in, and also taking into account the government subsidy when it materializes. At least for the first 2 years, it's going to be a very attractive proposition for the businesses to take over. At this point, I will stop here, obviously with respect of the time, but obviously if there are queries or questions, apart obviously from today, our branch network, business centers, and corporate finance are always open, obviously, to take any queries that might arise. We're here to support, we're here to assist, and obviously we need to ensure that our assistance is for a good cause, in the sense of ensuring business survival. It's not ultimately, the guarantee is taxpayers' money, so there's a huge responsibility to use it well and use it effectively, because at the end of the day, it is our money, it's our taxes that we are utilizing. So we really need the discipline and the responsibility to use it effectively and to survive and obviously prosper in the years to come. I thank you.
Hello, I'm not hearing anything. Okay, good morning. I am Marika Tonna. I am the CEO of Business First. For those of you that do not know us, Business First is the client-facing arm of Malta Enterprise. We are a limited liability company and we are jointly owned by Malta Enterprise and the Chamber of SMEs. Today, I am going to talk to you about the COVID wage measures which are being administered by Malta Enterprise. I will be going through our website. We have set up a dedicated website which contains all the information that you need on these measures. I have to start off by telling you that there are 4 different government entities currently working on COVID wage measures. If I can go to our website now, and so this is our website. It's covid19.maltaenterprise.com, and over here you will find all the initiatives for related to COVID-19. Now, some of the initiatives for employees are not being administered by us. They are social measures and they are being administered by the Social Security Department. These are measures for employees. They have a number of measures. They have measures for people who have received the letter to stay at home because of some medical conditions and the over 65. They have measures for parents who have to stay at home because now the kids are obviously not going to school and therefore one of the parents has to stay at home with the children. And if none of the parents can telework, there's measures for that as well. And they have a number of other measures. They also have increased unemployment benefits for those that have been put, unfortunately, that have been laid off and they had been fired because of COVID measures. So those are the measures very briefly for the employees, not the employers. Now, when it comes to our measures, Malta Enterprise measures, I think the most measure that people ask about is the COVID wage measure. So what is the COVID wage measure? In order to help you businesses with paying wages for your employees, we are helping with salaries. Now, having said that, it is very important to note that although we are passing through difficult times, it doesn't mean that employment laws do not apply. And therefore, one other entity that has a very important role to play during this time is the IER. The IER is the entity that regulates employment. So if you can't afford to pay your employees their usual salary and you need to decrease it to 1,200 or even less, but you cannot decrease it beyond the 800, then you need permission from the IER. If you need to put your employees on a 2-day week or 3-day week, you have to get the permission of the IER. They are being very understanding and they are being very flexible and very quick in their decisions. And in that case, there is a helpline 1576 for employees and 1575 for employers. Now, to go to our most, I have to say, popular measure, because we've received in excess of 18,000 applications for the famous 800 weight supplement or less. So all those entities that fall under Annex A, and Annex A is down here, you can click on it, are entitled to apply for the full COVID wage measure. So what is the full COVID wage measure? It's 800 per employee and 800 for every full-time employee or employees on a full-time reduced, or 500 for part-timers. For part-timers, it's a maximum of 500. So if during the last few months before COVID, they used to earn just 200 a month, then you are entitled to 200 a month. You have to tell us how much you are paying your part-timers, and we will pay you accordingly. Now, there are certain businesses that have been very, very badly affected by COVID, but they are not in Annex A. It does not mean that they cannot apply for the wage supplement. They can still apply for the wage supplement. In that case, they will have to explain to us how they have been affected. For example, if you are a meat seller, all right, and we all know that people are still buying groceries and food. However, your only clients were restaurants or hotels, your application will still be considered. So we get a lot of questions every day. But am I entitled? Am I entitled? If you make a strong case, everyone is entitled to Annex A. Obviously, you have to make a strong case. Keep in mind, this is government money. All right. Now, for those that have been less affected, there is Annex B. All right. For those that have been less affected. Now, it could be that you are in Annex B, but you still feel that you are entitled to Annex A. You can do so as well. Again, the application form is extremely simple. It can be found here on our website. You have to have the VAT number, and if you are in an activity that does not need a VAT number, you can still apply. So you have to have ready your VAT number, you have to have ready your IBAN number and the details of your employees. Okay? Make sure that you fill it in well. We are getting a lot of people that we have to go back to because they have not filled in the application form properly. Okay, so as much as possible, please be careful that you fill in your application form as properly as you can. Okay, we are issuing payments. We have done. We have in fact processed quite a number of applications, but obviously new applications are coming in. We did not put in a deadline yet. Now, I would say that most of the straightforward ones have now been assessed, and people are receiving an email with confirmation. Now, over the weekend, we had to contact well over 1,000 employers who have received confirmation of the wage supplement, but either did not realize that they received the email, either the email went into their junk, or as they gave us the wrong email address, or as they did not know that once you receive approval, you have to give us feedback. You have to press accept, partially accept, or disagree. So there is a sort of an appeal mechanism. It is very important that if you have applied, that you check your mailbox regularly. All right? We get a lot of questions from pensioners. This is a social measure. So employees who are also pensioners are not entitled to the COVID wage supplement, neither are students. But self-employed who are also pensioners are entitled to this measure. Okay, then obviously for Annex B, as you heard from your president, companies that operate out of Gozo are entitled to an extra benefit. All the notes are on our website. I suggest that before you apply, you read them. We get a lot of questions from Maltese companies that have a branch in Gozo, for example, a retail outlet that has a shop in Malta and a shop in Gozo. If it's a retail outlet that falls under Annex A, it's not a problem. They get 800 for all employees. If it falls under Annex B, then they will get the double wage supplement for those employees who operate from their Gozo branch. Okay, it's the same for Gozo companies that have branches in Malta. You only get the double for those workers who are in Gozo. Okay, so that is very simple. You just go in, it's totally online, and you apply from there. As soon as you apply, you will get an acknowledgement from us, and eventually you will also get the outcome of our evaluation. And as I said, if you accept, then within a few days you receive the money. If not, then we will reevaluate your application form. But I stress again, it does not mean that if you do not fall under Annex A, you're automatically not entitled to the wage supplement. As I said, we have 18,000 applications, and more are coming in. So, and now we're getting more and more complicated ones. But hopefully by the end of next week, most of them would have been assessed and you would have received our feedback. So this is one of the measures. And if you have any questions on that measures, I can answer them now. I know there was one regarding when we are going to finalize the whole exercise. We're working day and night to do it as quickly as possible. Please help us by checking in the application, because many times we are going back to the client and telling him, look, this employee does not exist. It would be the wrong ID card number, for example. And there are many mistakes that people make. I understand, because I myself am terrible with forms. So. But please do check, especially your IBAN, because then the money might go to someone else. So that is very important that you check your IBAN. Now, another measure which we are managing ourselves relates to quarantine leave. Now, our measure is for those that have to stay in for 15 days, either because they had been abroad or they managed to come back to Malta lately and they have to stay. Initially, it started for those who went abroad and had to stay indoors for 15 days, mandatory quarantine leave for 15 days. But there are still some people that are managing to return to the island, or else people who have to stay in for 15 days because maybe a colleague was found positive, and then the whole office or the whole shop floor will have to stay in for 15 days just in case they develop COVID. So this is not to be mixed with the social measure being administered by the Social Security Department, that is for those that have to stay in isolation, either because they have a serious illness or else because they are over 65 or else they are pregnant. In that case, those employees go on unpaid leave and apply from the Social Security Department. This is to help you employers pay for the quarantine leave. It is a lump sum of 350 per employee. It is not for people who have to stay indoors for just 2 days because they're waiting for the results. It's for those that have to stay indoors for 15 days. If an employee has to stay indoors on 2 different periods of 2 weeks, then the entitlement is for 350 times 2, as much as necessary. So if there is an employee who is so unlucky that has to stay indoors for 2 different periods of 15 days, then you can apply twice for that employee. You cannot get this and the wage supplement, in which case, if you're approved both, the 350 will be deducted from the 800. Okay? In the case of 1 day, you will get the maximum. So you will get this and not the other. So this is another measure. Again, all our application forms are online. You can find the application form here. And you can also, on the application form, there are the notes. So you can read the notes there. Now, another measure which we are managing ourselves is the measure on facilitating of teleworking. As you know, we are all teleworking. Even today, we are here. Most of us are at home and not in the office. And therefore, Malta Enterprise felt that it has to help employers who are encouraging and obeying what we're being told by the health authorities as much as possible, encouraging teleworking solutions. The support we are offering, as it's stated here in the website, is 500 per teleworking agreement. Now, we are all at home, so we are not expecting teleworking agreements to be signed on paper. Even if it's an exchange of emails between employer and employee accepting the conditions, then we are happy. And it is up to a maximum of 4,000 per undertaking. All right? The grant is awarded against 45% of eligible costs, and it has to be for costs incurred between 15th February and the 8th of May. We will need proof of payment, or for those of you who order online, at least proof that the hardware has been ordered. And it's there to cover hardware like laptops and also expenses incurred for VPN and stuff like that. It does not cover printers and other generic hardware, but it also covers in some cases. It does cover in some cases special software that is needed specifically for that particular for that particular work. So if you're an educational institution and need to get software specifically to deliver lectures from home, and it's a specific software for that, then it might be considered. I don't know if you have any questions on that as well. Basically, then there are measures which are related to banks. These measures are being administered by the Development Bank, and I think Albert is more in a position to answer these than me. Then there is also there was also a measure, but now it is closed. There was a measure by the tax authorities whereby you had the opportunity to apply to get your income tax and your VAT deferred. Okay, in that case, if you applied for it, even if you got approval, you still have to hand in your papers, but not payment for now because it's a deferral of taxes. Daniel, I'm not seeing any questions. Am I being heard?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now. Did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. And
Okay.
So the public is posting questions, and we thought of doing the Q&A session later on, and we publish all the questions on the screen.
Okay. I'm not seeing the questions though.
They are in the chat. So if you go in the public chat.
The public chat. Okay. So I have a question. I'm reading out the questions now because I think it's better to address the one-to-one questions. As a new business opened in November but completely affected by the COVID situation, am I entitled to COVID-19 support for self-employed? Depending on which area you fall under and if you have been badly affected by COVID-19, yes, you are, even though you only set up in November 19. When it comes to wage supplement, there is also a clause that says that employees would have to be recruited by the 9th of March. However, there are certain employees who are caught in between two jobs. So they were working the notice on their previous job, but they had not yet started working in their new job. Now, in that case, it's very unfair that we say that these employees are not eligible. So in this case, if you can prove to us that you have started negotiating and offered a contract to that employee, we will still consider that employee. Okay. There is a question on the skills development scheme. I would not like to go into the other measures of Malta Enterprise. I would like to focus as much as possible on the COVID measures. But yes, I will answer that. I will send an email on that. A big number of businesses, okay, I'm answering another question, that have up to now received just an acknowledgement. As I said, we've assessed more than half of the applications. A lot of applications are still coming in. Please do check your inbox, junk and spam, because as I told you, there are many who have received their acknowledgement and they have not realized it yet. My team had spent this weekend calling these people up. Once you receive our outcome, you receive an email, a longish email with a table with the amount of money. Then in that email, if you agree with our workings, you have to press accept. And within a few days, you will get the money. If you don't agree or you partially agree, you disagree only on one employee, for example, press partially accept and explain why. If you totally disagree, you have every right to do that. We do make mistakes as well, and we are reversing certain decisions. If you are right, it could be that you have not updated, for example, your Jobs Plus records. So an employee won't be registered in your name, or else you did not come up in Jobs Plus. Okay, sometimes system unfortunately fails us. A lot of this is worked out automatically, and sometimes unfortunately the IT fails us. So please come back to us if you agree or disagree with our decision. Otherwise, you will stay, as we say in Maltese, in limbo. We wouldn't know where we stand with you. So it is very important that you get back to us. Okay. Good morning. Suffering 80%. There is a question on rent. All right. That government is helping with with residential rents, but not with commercial rents. Unfortunately, it is true. The rental agreement, the commercial rental agreement, is a private agreement between the lessee and lessor, and government up to now does not have any measures to help with commercial rents. Having said that, there are many people who have come to an agreement, but it is a private agreement. So we don't, at the moment, there are no measures for this, and we do not come into it. We do not interfere, so to say. Okay. All right, that is about Anasha. There is a question for Albert. Maybe Albert would want to address it. All right, there is a question about a part-time casual worker that the business is closed for emergency eligible for a wage supplement. As long as the part-time casual worker is registered with Jobs Plus as part-time, yes, they are eligible, but they must not be students because students are not eligible. Okay, so full-time reduced employees or part-time workers are all eligible. What's important is that they are registered with Jobs Plus. Even if you are self-employed part-time, you are still eligible to the 500 pro rata, depending on how much you used to earn before. 500 is maximum for part-timers. What's important for us is that you are registered with Jobs Plus. Now, a question which comes up very often, although it has not come up today, is, but my employees are at home doing nothing. Shall I pay them anyway? You are aware that hotels and restaurants are closed. So yes, it is a social measure for you to keep your employees rather than fire them, so that once, please God, this is all over, you hit the ground running. If you have a good chef, if you have a good employee, you don't want to lose them. Also, if you have to start from scratch, besides you will still have to pay them the notice, you will have to start your training again. So we do understand that there are certain employees being paid for doing nothing at home, unfortunately. There are also certain companies and businesses who are asking, but I am doing a bit of sales. I am have a bit of delivery of food, up to 25% or even less. It is still considered. In fact, we encourage you to do something to try to have some income. Obviously, if you go back, there we had even clients who told us, look, I am not taking them because I thought it was going to hit me really badly, but I'm doing very well online. So they were honest and said, thanks, but no thank you. So really, it is up to us. At the moment, we are checking with the authorities, with Jobs Plus and with the tax authorities with regards to registration of employees, but we are taking your word for it. A lot of employers are and always will be honest. Obviously, this is not the time to try to change government. Should businesses reapply? There is going to be soon more than an application. If there are any changes in your employees, then you will have to inform us. You can lay people off, even if you are receiving the wage supplement. But if we've already paid you for them, you have to give them back to us. Because strictly speaking, the 800 gross, and I have to add it is gross, but you will be receiving it net of the 10% of the employees' NI contribution. Is there to be paid to the employees. It is not there for the business to keep. So if halfway through you had to lay some people off, just inform us and refund us the money pro rata. Now, I have said that you are going to receive the wage code supplement net of the 10%. Even if you are self-employed, on the amount you receive, you don't owe anything more to the taxman. Self-employed usually pay 15%, but on the 800, it is 10%. And it is taxable. So if your employees during the first few months of this year earned a very, very good salary, or as you're keeping them on that salary, the 800 is taxable. But you will be receiving it 10% net of the NI contribution of the employees. On the CFR website, they have a very good write-up on how it should be treated on your payroll and how you should be treating tax. So I suggest that if you get it, you will go into the website of CFR and see how you have to treat it. Another common question which we get is like, I'm receiving the money now, but I've already paid the salary for March. In that case, we fully understand that you have passed on the wage supplement already to your employees, and therefore you can keep it to yourself because you would have already paid it in advance. But please make a note in their payslip. This is not obligatory, but unless you want them to come back to you, because most of them think that they are going to get it over and above another 800. Please make a note that you have already paid them in advance. If you've also paid the NI, then there is a set-off in later months. So I have another question regarding schools. I can't see all the question, Mela. It is regarding child minding. As I said, parents who both work in the private sector and none of them can telework are eligible to the 800 supplement by Social Security. There is no end date to that for now, like ours. We are keeping things open, so we will see what's going to happen. But in that case, they have to apply the employees, not the employer, for the Social Security measure. We are getting a lot of questions, what is going to happen? We have to take the situation day by day. None of us know what's going to happen because we don't know if we're going to get another bout of this or not, or maybe we won't get any new cases for weeks on end and then everything will be back to normal. We don't know. It is an uncertain times for all of us, unfortunately. But as Mr. Borg told us, government is all the time talking to the constituted bodies, and we are seeing it, taking it day by day and see how we can help. Up to now, it was only the tax deferral scheme that has closed. All the other measures are still open. And as Mr. Borg also told you, there were changes. There were instances where government told constituted bodies, yes, you are right. Let's change this. All right. Laura Pelligata is asking whether the webinar is being recorded. I think yes, it is, but I think Daniel is in a better position to answer you. But according to my screen, it is.
It will be available on the Gozo Business Chamber Facebook page.
All right, and there are some questions which I think at this stage can be addressed by Albert, because they're asking about the banks. I don't know if Daniel, you want Albert to answer them until I get more questions on our measures.
Please switch on your mic and camera. Okay, there you are.
I'm not hearing you, Daniel.
We will be having another webinar. Marika, we will be taking note of some of the questions. Today we'll try to concentrate on the schemes of Malta Enterprise.
Okay.
But now we are liaising with Bank of Valletta to have another specific webinar on these loan guarantee schemes. So please feel free to post your comments, but these will be then be addressed separately.
I can also see that he is answering them online. So
okay, that's good.
Okay, so going back to our website, as you can see on our website, those of you who go through it, there are also some measures which are relating to liquidity. Those are the ones related to the development bank. There are basic details on there, and you will see, for example, a new measure which is going to be introduced soon regarding R&D. This is with reference to what Mr. Borg was saying before, that we too are thinking of beyond COVID. All right, and this is a measure that will be administered by us and Malta Council of Science and Technology, and as the name implies, it would be to encourage R&D. It is still being worked out, but more information about the measure will be asked, will be on our website soon. Because like Mr. Borg said, a very, very important point, hopefully this won't be with us for very long, and then we need to hit the ground running, and we have to think of a post-Brexit strategy. Okay. In fact, we are all already working with the very large enterprises, how we can help them with training during this time, because maybe they always wanted to provide some training to their employees, but since we were all operating at full capacity, they did not have the time to deliver this training, and now is the time to deliver this training for the employees who are not maybe so busy as they were before. So yes, we have a special person at ME dealing and liaising, where it's a team, not a person, with these larger companies to see how we can help them during this time with training as well. Our usual incentives are still there. We've also extended some of them, like the micro-invest scheme for self-employed, so that we can try to help as much as we can.
Marika, there is another question, I think.
One company receives full wage supplement for all of its full-time employees. One of the employees happened to have a part-time self-employed. Is she entitled to apply for a second? No. So it is on your main income. So in the case that you've applied yourself for the full-time employee, then the other employer cannot apply for the part-time. In which case, when both employers are applying, we would not know whether that person's other employer is going to apply. So the first one that comes in is approved, because it could be that only his part-time employer applies. I don't know if you're understanding me, but then we will adjust. And the full-time employer will get the 800 if approved. So it is only for your main source of income. Same goes with employees of the public sector who have businesses. We know that a lot of public sector employees have a shop or something which they open in the evening. Those are not eligible because their main income comes from the salary they have in the public sector. So it has to be your main income. But then part-timers who only have the part-time job will obviously are entitled to the wage supplement.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marika. Thank you very much. I think we have answered practically all the questions. Thank you very much for your insightful explanation. Also, thanks very much for accepting our invitation. We know how busy you are at the moment, so that was great. So we will now come to the end of our webinar. I would like to thank you all for accepting our invitation, also for the lot of people who has registered for this webinar. We did not expect such an amazing feedback. And as I said, because there was one of the questions which was basically on directing whether it will be recorded or not, this video will be available on Facebook, on our Facebook page. We have also live streamed, so we will be able to everyone will be able to see it there. Marika, there is one last question. So I don't know if you're able to take it there.
It is for a skills development scheme. This is not a COVID measure. I will check it out, but as far as I know, according to EU regulations, we cannot support legal obligations. So if you're legally obliged to get to do an amount of training with regards to your CPE, as far as I know, it's not eligible. But I will ask my colleagues at them, and I will get back to you, Daniel, and then you can answer the client accordingly.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Marika.
You're welcome.
So,
any more questions, Daniel, they can pass on to yourselves, and then we will answer one by one questions.
What I can say is that Malta Enterprise, also through their Gozo office, have been very helpful. We have directed them a lot of
They've
clients.
never been so busy, Daniel. Even on Sunday they work.
which they have addressed. So a really big well done for their effort. So we are now coming to the end of our webinar. As I said, I would like to thank you all for accepting our invitation. I sincerely hope that this webinar has been fruitful to you and has at least helped in a small measure to address some difficulties you may have had. Again, I would like to really thank Ms. Marika Tonna. She is the CEO of Business First, but she still found the time to be with us. So a really big thanks.
No, it's my duty and my pleasure, Daniel.
So we will not be stopping here, apart from continuing to address any difficulties and voice your concerns. We are planning to organize another 2 webinars in collaboration with Bank of Valletta in the coming weeks. These will address 2 important themes, which will basically tackle the theme of online payments. We need to live in a new normal, even for businesses, so we need to make the shift there. And we are going to even tackle this subject as a Gozo Business Chamber. And another subject will be the COVID-19 guarantee schemes. So we saw those comments, they were online on those, they are justified. Albert has tried to answer some comments, but I would like to reassure you that we will be having a specific webinar on the subject, which we are now trying to liaise with Bank of Valletta. The latter will be a very important webinar, so because we understand that the injection of the required liquidity by banks into ailing businesses which are reeling from the difficulties caused by the outbreak of the COVID-19 is the next important step to assist businesses so that they can recover quickly from this crisis. To this end, I would like to continue following us on all our media, Facebook, our website page, and we will be announcing more details in the coming days and weeks. Thanks a lot for joining us today.